I never thought I would be the type of person to plot revenge. Growing up, I was always the peacemaker, the one who forgave quickly and moved on. But betrayal has a way of changing people, especially when it comes from someone you considered family. Meredith and I had been best friends since college. We were inseparable through graduation, first jobs, breakups, and all of life's major milestones. When I decided to start my own event planning business, Stellar Celebrations, Meredith was my biggest cheerleader. She even quit her corporate job to join me as my business partner. "We are going to build something amazing together," she had promised, eyes bright with excitement as we clinked champagne glasses in my tiny apartment the night she came on board. For 3 years we worked tirelessly. I handled the creative side, themes, designs, vendor relationships, while Meredith managed the finances and marketing. We started small with local birthday parties and corporate events, but eventually secured contracts for celebrity weddings and high-profile charity galas. Our reputation grew steadily, and we were finally beginning to see substantial profits. Then came the Harrington wedding, our biggest opportunity yet. The Harringtons were old money, with connections to half the influential families on the East Coast. Landing their daughter's wedding was not just a paycheck. It was our gateway to the elite clientele we had been working toward for years. I poured everything into the planning. For 6 months, I worked 18-hour days, perfecting every detail from the hand-calligraphed invitations to the custom lighting installation that would make the garden reception look like something from a fairy tale. Meredith handled the budget and communications with the Harringtons, while I coordinated with more than 20 specialty vendors. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in June. 3 days before, I was at the venue for final preparations when my phone rang. It was Charlotte Harrington, the bride's mother. "Olivia, there seems to be some confusion," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I just received a call from the florist saying they have not received their deposit and will not be delivering unless payment is made in full today." I felt my stomach drop. "There must be some mistake, Mrs. Harrington. All vendor deposits were paid months ago." "Well, that is not what they are telling me, and they are not the only ones. The caterer called this morning with the same issue. I promised to resolve it immediately and called Meredith, who managed all our payments. I am not sure what happened," she said, sounding distracted. "There must be a mix-up with the bank. I will handle it right away." But when I arrived at our office an hour later, Meredith was not there. Calls went straight to voicemail. I logged into our business accounts to transfer the needed funds myself, and froze in horror. The accounts were nearly empty, where there should have been over $300,000, including the Harringtons' payment and our operating capital. There was less than $5,000 remaining. With shaking hands, I pulled up the transaction history. Over the past 3 months, there had been multiple large transfers to an account I did not recognize. The most recent withdrawal had been made yesterday, $95,000. I could not breathe. I could not think. I called our bank in a panic. "Yes, Ms. Collins, those transfers were authorized by Ms. Winters," the account manager informed me. She provided all the necessary credentials and signatures. Meredith had cleaned out our accounts, and now she was gone. The next 48 hours were a blur of panic, police reports, and desperate attempts to salvage the Harrington wedding. I maxed out my personal credit cards and took an emergency loan from my parents to pay the vendors. Somehow, through frantic work and the kindness of suppliers who accepted partial payments, we pulled off the event. The wedding was beautiful. The Harringtons were thrilled. No one would ever know the crisis behind the scenes, or that I had worked through the reception with a broken heart and terror about my future. The police investigation confirmed what I already knew. Meredith had been planning this for months, systematically draining our accounts while creating fake bank statements to show me during our financial reviews. She had disappeared completely. No social media, no contact with mutual friends, phone disconnected. The detective assigned to my case was not optimistic. "Unfortunately, Ms. Collins, these cases are difficult to prosecute even when we locate the suspect. Ms. Winters was an authorized signer on the accounts. You'll need to pursue civil action to recover the funds." Civil action against a ghost. I was left with a business on the verge of collapse, over $100,000 in personal debt, and a reputation at risk if word got out about what had happened. 2 weeks after the Harrington wedding, I received a package. Inside was a postcard from Bali with a short message in Meredith's handwriting. Thanks for the startup capital. Always wanted my own business without having to share the spotlight. You were always too trusting. That's business, sweetie. I stared at her familiar looping script, the casual cruelty of her words. And something inside me hardened. The old Olivia would have cried, would have asked why, would have wondered what she had done wrong. This new Olivia felt something different stirring in her chest, something cold and calculating. I pinned the postcard to my office wall. It would be my reminder, my motivation. The first step was survival. I called every client we had worked with over the past 3 years, explaining that Meredith had left the company to pursue other opportunities, and that I was now the sole owner of Stellar Celebrations. I did not mention the theft. I could not risk clients losing confidence in my business acumen. Next, I approached my closest vendors and told them a partial truth, that my business partner had absconded with company funds, leaving me in a difficult position. I negotiated extended payment terms and promised priority bookings once I was back on my feet. The hardest part was facing my 3 employees, all of whom were owed back pay. I was honest with them about the situation, offering them the choice to leave or stay with deferred compensation. To my surprise and gratitude, all 3 chose to stay. You've always treated us fairly, said Jamie, my assistant. We are not going to jump ship when you need us most. For 6 months, I worked around the clock, taking every job that came our way, no matter how small. I moved out of my apartment into a tiny studio to cut expenses. I sold my car and took public transportation. Every extra dollar went back into the business, or toward paying down my debt. Slowly, painfully, Stellar Celebrations began to recover. The Harrington wedding, despite its hidden drama, had indeed been our gateway to higher-profile clients. Referrals started coming in from their social circle. Throughout this time, I had not stopped thinking about Meredith. The postcard from Bali had been my only clue to her whereabouts, but it was months old by now. She could be anywhere. Then came an unexpected break. A client mentioned in passing that she had recently attended a wonderful event in Singapore, organized by a new company called Meridian Experiences. Their style reminded me of yours, actually, she said. That same attention to detail. The founder is this dynamic American woman who just moved there last year. My heart raced. Singapore. An American woman. A new company with a name that echoed Meredith's own. It could not be coincidence. That night, I searched online for Meridian Experiences. There it was, a sleek website showcasing luxury events across Southeast Asia. And there was Meredith, smiling confidently in the About Us section, now calling herself Meredith Mercer, founder and creative director. She had used my money to start a competing business halfway around the world. And from the looks of it, she was thriving. My first instinct was to contact the Singapore police, but what would that accomplish? International legal proceedings would be lengthy, expensive, and might yield nothing. No, this required a different approach. I began researching Singapore's event planning industry, its major players and upcoming opportunities. I learned that the biggest event of the social season was the annual Luminous Gala, hosted by the Pan-Asian Cultural Foundation. The planning contract was awarded through a competitive bid process, and according to industry news, Meridian Experiences was on the shortlist for this year's event. This would be my entry point. I reached out to a former client who sat on the board of an international arts foundation with connections to the Pan-Asian Cultural Foundation. I pitched him an idea. Stellar Celebrations wanted to expand into the Asian market and would like to offer our services to design a show-stopping centerpiece installation for the Luminous Gala, pro bono, as a way to introduce ourselves to the market. A gift from our company to demonstrate what American design aesthetics can bring to an already spectacular event, I explained. No strings attached. Intrigued by the offer and impressed by our portfolio, which prominently featured the Harrington wedding, my contact made the introduction. Within weeks, I was on a video call with the gala committee, presenting my concept for a floating garden installation that would transform their venue. They loved it. Even better, they had not yet finalized their event planner contract and were interested in seeing a full proposal from Stellar Celebrations. I worked day and night on that proposal, creating my most innovative designs, securing preferential rates from Asian suppliers I had cultivated relationships with, and putting together a budget that I knew would be difficult for any competitor to match. I leveraged every connection I had made over the years, calling in favors and making promises. 2 weeks later, I received the news. Stellar Celebrations had been awarded the Luminous Gala contract over 3 local companies, including Meridian Experiences. I booked my flight to Singapore the same day. I arrived 2 months before the gala and established a temporary office. Through careful networking and subtle questioning, I learned that Meredith, or Meredith Mercer as she was now known, had positioned herself as an industry veteran with decades of experience. She had built Meridian Experiences into a significant player in just under a year, primarily by undercutting established companies on price while delivering impressive events. I also discovered that Meredith had taken the loss of the Luminous Gala contract badly. It would have been her biggest achievement yet in the Singapore market. Now she was scrambling to secure other high-profile events to maintain her company's momentum. I could have confronted her immediately. I knew where her office was located, and had even caught a glimpse of her once at a popular restaurant. But that was not my plan. I wanted more than an awkward confrontation or hollow apology. I wanted her to experience the same devastating loss that she had inflicted on me. The Luminous Gala was scheduled for March 15th. By early February, my installation was well underway, and I had ingratiated myself with Singapore's event planning community. I attended industry mixers, offered advice freely to smaller companies, and made it known that Stellar Celebrations was considering a permanent Singapore branch. It was at one of these mixers that I finally came face to face with Meredith. I saw her before she saw me. She was holding court in a corner, champagne flute in hand, laughing with a group of local vendors. She looked prosperous and confident in an expensive silk dress, her hair styled differently than I remembered. Then our eyes met across the room. The shock on her face was everything I had imagined, her smile freezing, glass halting halfway to her mouth, color draining from her face. I smiled pleasantly and made my way over to her group. "Meredith, what a surprise to see you here," I said warmly, as if we were old friends who had simply fallen out of touch. She recovered quickly. I had to give her that. "Olivia, I had no idea you were in Singapore." "Oh yes, for the Luminous Gala. Stellar Celebrations is handling it this year. I am surprised we have not crossed paths before now. I have heard so much about Meridian Experiences." The vendors looked between us curiously. "You two know each other?" one asked. "Oh, we go way back," I said with a smile that did not reach my eyes. "Meredith and I used to be partners actually, before she moved to Asia." Meredith's eyes flashed with warning. "Ancient history," she said dismissively. "Our business models were ultimately incompatible." Yes. Ethical differences primarily," I replied, maintaining my pleasant tone. "How is everything going with Meridian? I heard you were also bidding for the Luminous Gala." A muscle twitched in her jaw. "We have plenty of other projects keeping us busy." "Wonderful to hear. We should catch up properly while I am in town. I would love to hear how you got your start in Singapore. It must have required significant capital to establish yourself so quickly." She made an excuse about needing to speak with someone and retreated across the room. For the rest of the evening, she kept her distance, though I caught her watching me warily several times. The next day, I received a text from an unknown number. "What do you want, Olivia?" "Money. An apology. Name your price." I replied, "Just catching up with an old friend. Having dinner at Chez Marcel tomorrow at 8. Join me if you would like to talk." Meredith arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes late, clearly having spent those minutes deciding whether to come at all. She slid into the seat across from me, tense and defensive. "Let's skip the pretense," she said. "Are you here to ruin me?" I sipped my wine. That is an interesting question from the woman who emptied our company accounts and disappeared with $300,000. It was a business decision. It was theft, Meredith. She leaned forward. "Look, I can pay you back. Not all at once, but over time. Just keep our history quiet. The industry here does not need to know about stellar celebrations. I studied her face, the face I had once trusted completely. Do you ever think about what you did? The damage? I nearly lost everything. But you did not, she countered. Clearly you recovered. You landed the Luminous Gala for God's sake. No thanks to you. She sighed impatiently. What do you want, Olivia? You have always been direct. Be direct now. I placed a folder on the table and slid it toward her. This is what I want. Inside was a contract transferring ownership of Meridian Experiences to me, along with all its assets and client relationships. Meredith laughed in disbelief. You cannot be serious. Completely serious. You built Meridian with stolen money, my money. By rights, it has always been mine. I will not sign this, she hissed. Then I will go to the police tomorrow with evidence of your theft. I will contact every client of Meridian Experiences and tell them how its founder operates. I will speak to the Business Licensing Board about the fraudulent origins of your company's capital. And I will make sure every event planner in Singapore knows exactly who Meredith Mercer really is. Her face hardened. You would not. I leaned forward. I spent a year rebuilding what you destroyed, working 18-hour days, taking on debt, wondering if I would lose my home. So yes, I absolutely would. The only question is whether you lose your business quietly or spectacularly. You are bluffing. Try me. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email I had drafted to Meridian's top clients, complete with police reports and bank statements documenting her theft. My finger hovered over the send button. Shall I? We stared at each other in tense silence. Then I saw it. The moment she realized I was not the same trusting person she had betrayed a year ago. You will destroy everything I have built, she said quietly. No. I will reclaim what was built with my money and my sacrifice. There is a difference. 2 days later, Meredith signed the papers transferring Meridian Experiences to me. She also signed a non-compete agreement barring her from the event planning industry in Asia for 5 years. In return, I agreed not to pursue criminal charges and gave her a small severance. Enough for a flight home and 2 months' living expenses, but nothing more. I watched her sign away everything she had stolen from me, her hand trembling slightly. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, pushing the papers across the table. That is not my concern, I replied. But if I were you, I would find a line of work that does not rely on trust or partnership. The Luminous Gala was a resounding success. My floating garden installation was featured in several design magazines, and Stellar Celebrations, Singapore presence, was firmly established. I merged the operations of Meridian Experiences into Stellar, retaining their clients and most of their staff, who knew nothing about their former boss's deception. 1 month after the gala, I was reviewing applications for a new creative director position when a familiar name caught my eye. Meredith had applied, using her real name, with a cover letter pleading for a second chance. I know I do not deserve your consideration, she wrote. But I have nowhere else to turn. No one will hire me after what happened with Meridian. I am facing eviction and have maxed out my credit cards. I was wrong and I am sorry. Please, Olivia. I stared at her application for a long time. Part of me, the hard, cold part that had formed when I discovered her betrayal, felt vindicated. She was experiencing exactly what she had put me through. Another part remembered our history, the years of friendship before the betrayal. I picked up my phone and called the number on her application. Meredith, this is Olivia. I received your application. Olivia, thank you for calling. I am not hiring you, I interrupted. That will never happen. But I do have a proposition for you. Anything, she said, her voice small. I have a former vendor who owes me a significant amount of money. He has been ignoring my collection attempts. Find him and get my money back, and I will give you 20%. You want me to be your debt collector? Consider it a form of poetic justice. You are good at convincing people to part with money. This time, you can use that skill for legitimate purposes. There was a long silence. And if I succeed? Then we will discuss other collections that need to be made. It could become a regular arrangement. But understand this. You will never again have access to my accounts, my clients, or my trust. You will be a contractor, nothing more. I understand, she said quietly. I will do it. 6 months later, Meredith had recovered nearly $200,000 in outstanding debts for stellar celebrations. She worked diligently, if resentfully, in her new role as my personal debt collector. It was not the glamorous career she had envisioned, but it was employment when she had few other options. Meanwhile, stellar celebrations continued to flourish, expanding into Hong Kong and Tokyo. With Meridian's client base and my creative direction, we quickly became one of Asia's premier event planning companies. Sometimes, when I looked across my Singapore office at the team bustling with activity, I thought about how differently things might have turned out. If Meredith had not betrayed me, we might still be partners, building something together in our small office back home. But her betrayal, painful as it was, had forced me to become stronger, more strategic, more determined than I ever would have been otherwise. In trying to destroy me, she had inadvertently created a more formidable version of myself. On the anniversary of the day I discovered the theft, I received an email from Meredith with her latest collection report. At the bottom she had added a personal note. I know it does not change anything, but I think about what I did every day. I am sorry, Olivia. Truly. I did not respond to that part of her message. Some betrayals go too deep for simple apologies. But I did examine my feelings and found that the burning rage that had driven me for so long had cooled into something else. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a calm recognition that the scales had finally balanced. I had taken back everything she stole from me and more. I had turned her betrayal into my triumph. And in doing so, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. The trusting Olivia who had been so easily deceived was gone forever. In her place stood someone wiser, more cautious, but also more powerful. Someone who would never again be anyone's victim. Revenge, I had learned, was not just about making someone pay for what they had done. It was about reclaiming what was taken from you. Not just money or opportunity, but your sense of agency, your belief in yourself. Meredith had stolen my business. I had built an empire. That was the sweetest revenge of all.